I think the biggest thing that I see is the people who don't make changes are the people who don't even see it as a possibility. It's never even occurred to them that it doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't need to look like this, right? But they have accepted that it's always going to be hard. I can't do these things. This is just my life now and it sucks. Like, that's not what I want you to accept. We need to accept some things and we need to challenge some others here.
All right, Melissa. Welcome. Let's get emotionally uncomfortable.
Hi, Heather. How's it going?
I know how to get you emotionally uncomfortable, and you keep coming back for more and more and more.
Yes, you definitely are really good at getting people emotionally uncomfortable and pushing through those limiting beliefs and ceilings that we kind of have to move through to our next level vision.
And you're always you're up for the challenge. You're like the athlete that's like, give it to me, just give it to me. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And what do I need to do to kind of like move through my shit faster, which is kind of going hand in hand with the conversation we're going to have today about type 1 diabetes and managing diabetes in general. And I think the people that are listening to this, well, I'm curious the percentage of the population that actually has diabetes, if you're open to sharing that. But my belief in general is like, I'm just going to say managing a disease versus thriving with a disease. What is it? A disease? Is that what they would
Yeah, it's
say?
considered a chronic disease. Yeah.
So first of all, how much of the population is diabetic?
So, type 2 diabetes is way more common. There are a ton of people with type 2 diabetes, and it's growing pretty rapidly. There's been a massive rise. Type 1 is much more uncommon. It's still not a rare disease by any means, but it's definitely a lot less common than type 1. I haven't looked up any recent statistics on like what the exact numbers are. I know with COVID, that certainly bumped up type 1 a little bit. Type 1 is often triggered by like an illness or a virus or a trauma in the body where the immune system gets really overexcited. And so COVID did that for a lot of people. So there was a pretty significant bump after COVID.
Interesting. Number one, did not know that. Can you tell the difference between, like, for someone who knows nothing about this, like the main difference between type 1 and type 2?
So, type 1 is an autoimmune disorder where the body destroys the pancreas, one of our organs, its ability to make the hormone insulin. And we can't live without insulin because it's how we make energy. It's how we turn sugar into energy for our heart to beat and our lungs to breathe. Type 2 is a very, very different disease. A lot of people actually kind of wish that they would just separate them out and call them something different because in type 2 diabetes, usually the problem is that you don't use insulin well. You make plenty of it, but you don't use it well. Initially, after a long time of being type 2, you can lose some of your ability to make insulin, but early on in the disease, if you test your insulin levels, they're actually really, really high. You make tons of it, your body just can't use it properly.
So when they talk about type 2, is the lifestyle diabetes, like you can heal it if you change your lifestyle?
So it does depend. Type 2 has a lot of factors. So there is a genetic component that makes you more likely to develop type 2. There is a lifestyle component when we're overweight and we eat a lot of processed junk foods and we don't exercise, that increases the risk for it. It's certainly not 100% preventable, just like, look at lung cancer. Most people who get lung cancer are smokers, but not 100% of them, right? There's some people who get it from something else. Type 2 is like that, where there are people who can improve things and shift and put their type 2 diabetes kind of in remission. We don't often look at it as fully cured because I always kind of tell people it's like the monster in the closet. As soon as you can't keep working out or keep eating healthy, you get an injury, someone dies and you get off track, it kind of pops back out at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone the other day was just like, oh, so are you cured from cancer? And I was like, I think they call it remission. And it's kind of interesting in life in general. I see a lot of whether it's, a disease or it could be like anything. They'd like to be like, listen, there's a moment where you manage something and it is not active or you're not having a flare up. This brings me to kind of like the identity piece around, I'm going to call it managing disease or managing chronic disease. And I think it started as a like just being a rebel. Like it wasn't from a place of fear, but it was this like, I don't want to attach this identity to a disease. And I often see people who will introduce themselves with their labels and disease. And I think one of the things that you and I have in common is thriving, like, which is a very abnormal way to live in the world, is like, I am not going to settle. Like I have higher standards for this. So just tell a little bit about your personal story around how T1D is in your life, and how that came to be. And of course, it's fascinating the work you do too because of this.
Yeah. I mean, 100% I agree. I'm totally in that thrival mindset. I am not someone who is going to settle for good enough. I'm always going next level. Let's do the next thing.
Were you always like that?
Yeah, I think I've kind of always been that way. I've definitely grown that piece of me more. Like it was there naturally, but it was a little beat down by life circumstances. And I think really when I joined your program, like I'll rewind and tell a little bit of the story, but that really was the moment where I was like, no more. Like, this is not acceptable. I refuse to stay here. I'm going somewhere else. It's not going to be here. And so that moment was my youngest kiddo was 5 years old. We were sitting in the gastroenterologist office. We were there for a normal follow-up after his endoscopy. I didn't really expect to get any big life-changing news. One, I thought they would have called me if there was something big, and two, other tests that we had done didn't really lead me to believe that we'd get any big diagnosis. And he'd had nausea and vomiting for almost a year at that point. We'd been really struggling. We'd done a bunch of things. Nothing was working. Nothing was improving it. And the doctor comes in and she tells us that he has celiac disease. So celiac disease means you cannot eat any kind of gluten, which is in wheat, rye, barley. Oats are usually contaminated with it. So it's a lot of things. But more than that, the doctor starts telling me about how we have to get all new pans and use a separate sponge in our kitchen and use a different toaster. And we have to be careful where we place things on the refrigerator shelves so there's not cross contamination. And all I could think in that moment is like, what am I going to feed my kid right now today? It is 4:30 in the afternoon. We honestly were planning on getting takeout on the way home because it's a late doctor's appointment. We're not going to go home till 6 o'clock at night. My kids were still pretty young then. So that's like, okay, we need to get dinner quick, get baths, get bedtime. And I was like, literally, I have no idea what to feed him today. Like, I can figure out tomorrow and next week, like, that's fine. But like, what am I going to give him today? You can't just stop somewhere and get something quick. Even if I could, I don't have the pans to cook it. Like, it was super stressful. And I was like, I'm already in healthcare. What does everyone else do? And so that was like the moment. Leading up to that, I'd had a ton of medical things. Like, my husband was in a motorcycle accident my first week of pharmacy school. He was in the ICU. He had surgeries all through pharmacy school, like 15 surgeries while I was in pharmacy school. We didn't know if he'd live. We didn't know if he would walk. And then I finished school anyways, managed that. My oldest was born. He had severe infant reflux, and then he had a severe speech delay, didn't say a single word until he was like 3. So we did all the work up for that. My husband blew himself up and had 2nd and 3rd degree burns. That was 2016, right after my youngest was born. And then in 2019, my husband's vertebral artery tore and he had 2 strokes. 2020 COVID happened and that was just chaos everywhere, right? We were homeschooling the kids. And then now this is 2021. We're about to start kindergarten and we get this celiac diagnosis. And I had been listening to your podcast and kind of following you. And this was like the moment where I was like, okay, like every crisis that's come up, I've handled, I've dealt with. And I keep thinking like, once I get through this crisis, right, then life will settle down and it will feel less overwhelming. And I was just like, you know what? Quite frankly, my life is clearly just going to continue to be chaos. And I need to figure out how to still be able to get to joy and thriving and loving life, because we only get one life and this is the one I have. So I would like to enjoy it. And that's when I joined you.
I'm listening to you and I'm like, I've heard this story before, but now that you're telling it through this lens and we're kind of like linking it with the type 1 diabetes, I'm like, okay, this makes sense then. Like your standard for quality of life and fulfillment of life, like you set that standard in that tone and you kind of like rose that thermostat for yourself, right? Like you had enough of the crisis hamster wheel and you were like, checked that box, right? I've publicly said when I had my diagnosis, although mentally I knew it and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to like live this feeling like shit all the time. But when the diagnosis happens, it wasn't that it gave me permission. I was just like, I am done. Yep, just checked that box. Will not get back here, which is evidence that it is like a secret, silent decision that somebody makes.
Yeah.
So your son gets diagnosed and you enter this life of T1D. And are you it like doing diabetic? Like, are you supporting diabetics at this time in your professional life?
At this point in the story, he actually doesn't even have type 1 diabetes yet. In my pharmacy career, now this has been many years. So when I got out of pharmacy school, I started managing type 1 diabetes. It's really my area of focus. I deal with insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors. It's like my wheelhouse. It's what I really love doing. I'm passionate about it. It's super interesting, mixes some science and some art because everyone's different. So I've been doing that for years. So we get the celiac diagnosis. I join your program and I really start dialing in on my personal development journey. And I'd already done some before coming into your community, but I really focused on like challenging these limited beliefs and like refusing to be in my comfort zone of overwhelm anymore. Like it's sad that that becomes your comfort zone, but 20 years of medical emergencies and it did. So I really had to challenge that and be like, this is not where I want to be. And so then the next year in 2022, that is when I actually found my kiddo's type 1 diabetes at home myself from living this career. And so my whole career was practice for taking care of him and finding it early and advocating for him and teaching him to advocate for himself, which then led me to kind of see the difference in our journey compared to what all of my patients in clinic came in. You know, they were constantly in overwhelm and fear and denial and frustration and just miserable trying to juggle everything, feeling like this is just so hard. And sometimes I cringe a little bit saying this because I don't ever want to minimize someone else's experience. But for us, type 1 diabetes just isn't that hard. I'm not saying it's always easy. There are challenges, don't get me wrong. But I'd already done a heck of a lot of hard things. And I worked on challenging how I look at things and challenging the beliefs around those stories of this sucks, why me? This is so hard. I can't do it. I'm never going to figure it out. You know, all of those kind of stories I'd already worked through with all of the other things that happened. And with this diagnosis, I felt like an expert, unlike the previous things. You know, I did it all day, every day. So the clinical pieces, like the decision making, the what insulin pump should I put him on? How do I dose the insulin? Like that stuff was easy. And the mindset stuff also came easy. And we did a lot of that. Like we don't look at his blood sugars as a moral judgment, which is something I see patients coming in upset about all the time. They're like, I'm a bad diabetic or I have bad numbers. Well, blood sugars really aren't moral. You're not morally a good or bad person if you're struggling to control a chronic disease, right? You just don't have the right information or the right tools or the right support. It doesn't mean that you're bad.
I remember feeling that way, like when my body would have like a flare up. Even now, something happens. I'm like, I thought I did everything right. And I know that if I go to that mindset or that story or belief. I'm not going to say I'm like stepping into like victim, but I'm like, why am I making this about me? Like, why can't we just observe what is from a place of like data? Like, it is what it is, right? And we're so hard on ourselves of like, why did this happen? Why did that happen? So I'm curious what you've noticed. Like, you're the mother of a child, and there's obviously managing disease in a professional manner. What have you noticed, like, when it comes from like a place of resilience or grit? What skills, if we're thinking about thriving, I don't want to say benefits per se, but what growth opportunities or what do you notice in your son that you think diabetes has given him?
Yeah, I mean, he's interesting because he is like the most resilient kiddo. It's amazing to watch. I always kind of joke and say I want to be him when I grow up because he is sunshine personified, even with all of his health issues, even though he feels like garbage a lot of the time. He is sunshine. And I joke like this is one of my favorite stories that just really like highlights him. We were talking once about like the whole glass half full, glass half empty kind of, analogy. And we're talking about it. And I asked my older son, and, he has his view. And then we're talking, and my youngest is like, Mom, the glass is not half full or half empty. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, can you not picture this? Like, there's water halfway in the glass. And he's like, yeah, Mom, but the glass is full. The top of it's full of air. And it's
Interesting.
just like that is who he is. Like, that's a perfect analogy of how he views the world. Like, the glass is not even half full. It's like overflowing because it's full of air on
It's
top.
full of multiple things.
Yeah. And that's just
Wow.
so him. He has so much grit and resilience from this. He's very open and he discusses it with a lot of people. He loves to like share information and like teach people about it. And one of the biggest things I think it has given him is the ability to advocate for himself because his school nurse normally is phenomenal, but we have had substitute nurses who don't know him very well. And honestly, they may not know much about diabetes if they haven't been in a school with a lot of kids who have it. And so we have had several, but one in particular that he has really struggled with because she's always trying to tell him to do something that he knows is not the right thing. So, like, he corrects a low blood sugar with one package of Smarties. He knows that. She does not feel that's enough. So she keeps being like, have more, have more. And he will take a stand and he has done this. He is like, I'm not eating anything more. Call my mom because he knows that that's not what's best for him. And then I talk to her and I'm like, yep, he's right. That's fine. That's all we have to do. We just have to wait for it to work now. And now he's 10, but he started this at 6 and he was able to do that at 6 and 7 years old. It's really not something that a lot of kids that age can do for themselves, but he has to. He needs to keep himself alive.
I One thing I've learned from you, since this is something I haven't dealt with as a mother, is how to show up. Obviously, like allowing your children to advocate, but like having no idea. Of course, you've taught me a lot about diabetics in my own life. It's an invisible disease that people are managing. And oftentimes, you don't even know there's diabetics around you until they're in a crisis state.
For sure.
So now I'm like, who here's diabetic? What do you need? And also what I've realized is people are too busy managing their own disease that they don't want to be a burden to others.
Mhm.
And so when you're in a crisis state or when you're in a sticky situation, number one, your brain's not functioning properly. And, if the person if they have the ability to advocate for themselves, it's this fine balance of knowing when to hold space and allow somebody to do their thing and advocate for what they need, but leaning in when you know they're lying to you and the ship is going down and you're like, okay, do I lean in? Do I lean out? And that I think is the art form that you're talking about, right? It's the art of science and strategy is only going to get you so far.
For sure.
You can like manage the shit out of a disease from a science based place or strategic. But this is like the human aspect of it, of like where you as a human really taking the stand for the life you want to live, how you want to feel in your body if you are chronically managing disease. And I know as a professional, obviously in a hospital setting or in a more traditional setting, you're of course going to have different types of people coming to you who are like, I'm just willing to do the bare minimum. I've been told to come to these appointments, but I also know that you attract people that I would consider like I've been talking a lot about like athletes. Like they want to thrive in their disease or they want to live a good quality life and maybe manage diabetes if they're living a very active lifestyle or they want to do something else. So, can you talk a little bit about how maybe in your work you take, what would you call it, like T1D management to the next level? If somebody's like considering that, like, I never even thought about that. Like, I didn't even know I could thrive. What are they doing differently? And what do you suggest there? What have you seen be really, really successful for those adults and children?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole premise of my business, stepping out from the traditional healthcare model to be like, okay, the healthcare model teaches you how to not end up in the hospital constantly and how to like get okay, decent control, but it doesn't teach you how to thrive. It doesn't give you the skills that you need from an energy standpoint, from like a human perspective. Like you said, it's very like take your insulin at this time. Okay, that's great. But what happens when life actually happens and interferes with that? Because you are doing this every day, all day. It's not like you just have to, swallow one pill and you're done for the day. It's like a constant thing. So teaching people how to really automate their systems and start thinking about it in a much, much different way. I mean, I kind of liken it to driving a car. Like if I put you in a car and you had never seen a car, you'd never seen a road, you'd never seen a stop sign, a steering wheel, a gas pedal, a brake pedal, a turning signal, you'd be like, oh my God, what do all these levers and wheels and pedals do? Right? Do I go when it's red or green? I don't know if you've never learned that, right? And so when people are first diagnosed, we give them those very basics in the clinic setting, right? This is a red light, this is a green light, this is like what a car does. Good luck. But my strategy is more about, okay, get to the point where now we've all been driving a while, right? And if I ask you, Heather, how do you keep your car between the lines? You're like, I have no idea. I just do. It's like automated. I don't have to think about it. I'm not like, oh, let's see, if I'm drifting to the right, I turn the wheel 10 degrees. Like that is not what happens, right? But that would scientifically be the way we would lay it out. But that's not realistic. If you drove like that, you'd drive yourself crazy. It would be so hard to drive if you were thinking, okay, I have to push the pedal 10%, like whatever. So teaching people how to like integrate it and automate it into their life so that it's not feeling like constant decision fatigue and constant stress of like, oh my gosh, having backup plans, having a process for that, having a go bag. Like a lot of times people will complain to me like, it's so hard to even just get out the door because I have so many things I need to make sure I have with me to keep me alive. And I'm like, I grab one bag, everything's in it. Like it's easy to set that up and just keep it by the door, but people just don't think to do that because they're in the everyday like slog of it.
Yeah. I also feel like as you're talking, yes, it's identity, right? But it's I've been thinking about like the action. Like action and implementation is required in order to have behavioral change, in order to have the identity shift. And it's just time under tension. Like this has nothing to do with what you're saying, but I think about, well, I guess it could if you're someone needs to change what they're eating to support their insulin and stuff like that. But in 2020, I started eating differently. And I remember how stressful it was to leave the house, like I almost like panic to the point where I couldn't even go out to just be like, can I have some chicken and vegetables? Like that felt so overwhelming to me. Where now I'm like, this is easy peasy. And I could never go back to that old version of me. So you see this like dissonance between like the current you versus the past you or other people. And the only gap across the bridge is action and implementation. And when you're doing that, of course, it's incredibly messy and emotionally uncomfortable, which is, the whole freaking point. What do you think? like people in general, humans, and maybe you've seen this in your patients, like their resistance to change, even though they have this like potentially life threatening disease that they can't live without. Like you can't wish it gone. So it's either like you accept it and move forward or you stay here for the rest of your life. What do you see as like the actual resistance that these people are coming against?
I think the biggest thing that I see is the people who don't make changes are the people who don't even see it as a possibility. It's never even occurred to them that it doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't need to look like this, right? But they have accepted that it's always going to be hard. I can't do these things. This is just my life now and it sucks. Like, that's not what I want you to accept. We need to accept some things and we need to challenge some others here.
Well, kind of like what we were saying earlier around like you were done with the like what was it? Something about like the chronic overwhelm or
Yeah.
addiction to overwhelm or that being your comfort zone.
Yes, that being my comfort zone. And I don't think I even realized it was my comfort zone until I really started working with you and starting to become a lot more aware of my beliefs and my thought patterns. And sometimes I would catch myself being like, oh, I can't handle one more thing, or I'm just so overwhelmed. And then I would be like, wait a minute, am I even feeling that? Or is that just like a running like tape in the back of my head in this like old tape deck that I have laying around?
Yeah, you're like, oh, where did that? Why am I telling myself that story?
Yeah.
Is that even truth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try a different story and see what happens.
Many times you and I have had conversations, and I giggle because I can do very well in chaos, mainly probably because I've had a lot of chaos around me. In this season of my life, I feel very calm in chaos, but I do believe that's because of all, not even the inner work to emotionally regulate, but getting those systems and structures in place. It's not just about being able to be emotionally calm. It's also like I've done the foundational work to have stability and systems that build off. So there's always that logic. What did I say? Science and systems, and then the art form of like the emotional regulation. And like you said, not just buying into this like mental tape that's in your mind. You made the leap before. You're like, I am done with this shit. You learn how to manage your energy. There's always a new level, new devil. I know you're stepping into a new level and you're like, oh, yay, get to double down on this. But there's you managing your energy. There's your son. You're supporting him managing that. Of course, he has this beautiful, amazing attitude. But if you are being honest, how much do you believe that your leadership and you managing your energy affects your family when you watch yourself going through these little crises all the time or new levels?
Oh, 100%. And I'm very fortunate to have been able to teach my kiddos a fair amount about this stuff, and they will call me out. They will be like,
Oh
Mom,
yeah, it's so fun when you get to that phase. You're like, are you okay? And you're like, excuse me.
both of my kids, if I am struggling, they will be like, Mom, when is the last time you meditated?
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, I mean, it's a huge thing. I do think that the way that we approached Caleb's diabetes diagnosis was huge for how he looks at it as well. You know, again, I see a lot of families coming to me or patients that I've worked with in the past where the parents are freaking out, which not to say that's wrong, 100% get it. It's a big life-changing disease. And if you know nothing about it, again, it's like that getting into a car and being like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. And it's going to keep my kid alive or not. That's horrifying, right? But it's also kind of like when you see a little kid, real little toddler learning to walk and they fall down. And if mom is like, oh my gosh, are you okay? They start bawling versus if you laugh or you like shake it off, like they pop up and they're fine. Of course, you know, barring real injury, but like that is a piece of this, right? And we very much approached this diagnosis as like no big deal. We got this, we know what we're doing, we can manage this no problem. And he doesn't think of it as a big deal either. Now, you know, he's 10, puberty's coming. We'll see what that looks like because being different in puberty is not always fun. So he may have some moments where some big feelings around it come up. But he really doesn't seem like it's a big deal. And honestly, that's something he's told me. I asked him once, like, buddy, what is like the one thing that I need to tell someone who comes to see me who is brand new to this, just got told that they have type 1 diabetes? And he thought about it and he was like, really engaged, not just like blowing me off. And he was like, Mom, I really just think you need to tell him it's not a big deal. And again, that was like a moment for me that was like, okay, we're doing it wrong in healthcare because I've never heard someone say that before. They're all devastated, they're all struggling. When I told some of my patients that my son was diagnosed, they were like crying for me or being like, I'm so sorry you have to go through that. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, we're good. You're having more upset about this than I did. It's not that hard. Yes, it's challenging. And again, going back to the car analogy, I sometimes will say, like, for us, it's mostly automated like that. Don't even think about it. But that doesn't mean there's not a snowstorm that we're driving through some days that are challenging. My son had surgery and they gave him some steroids, which makes your blood sugar go crazy. And that was different. Then it was hard for a few days again. But then it goes back to being automated, right? So it's not 100% easy all the time, but it doesn't have to be as hard as it often feels.
That's a really, really good point, is observing. I mean, one of the number one questions that I get is how to not let the energy of others affect you. And I think when you're doing this work yourself, like sometimes when people ask that question, I'm like, okay, you're in it, right? Like you're in it and you're like, how do I not let this affect me? But you have to commit to the journey. You have to commit to like, I'm going to learn how to manage my energy. And when you learn to manage your energy, and you're on the outside of it and you're catching yourself for the first time, it's kind of a weird mind game because you're like, should I be overwhelmed? Should this be harder? And it starts to play these games with you. But the reality is, you're like, oh, I now have evidence that I know how not to let the energy of others affect me. And most of the time, when I'm talking to people, asking them, like, what do you want? How do you want to feel? Is this work for you? Yes or no? Like, what conversation do you want to have? They're so buried in everybody else's shit. And disease does not need to, and managing that does not need to be just because of what someone else told you or what society's telling you or what your doctor told you. You can take ownership for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like motherhood, right? Everyone's like, oh, like, it's so hard. You're going to need all the wine or whatever the story is. And it's just like, you don't have to choose to live that version. There's other versions out there. And that's true with disease state management. I laugh because I like chatting with AI sometimes to like, I don't know, it's kind of like journaling for me sometimes, like working through my feelings. But I've had to train my AI and I have to remind it often because it'll be like, oh, this is all a lot. This is really hard. You must be overwhelmed. And I'm like, stop that. That is not the story we're going with here. I have handled harder things. This is all good stuff. Yes, it might be busy or hectic, but like, I'm not overwhelmed. Stop telling me I should be.
Does it apologize? I am so sorry.
Yes, it'll
You say,
apologize.
I have gone through Heather Chauvin's course and I'm a master. I'm a mentor now, so leave me alone. And then AI be like, oh, okay, sorry. I've done the research. I know the results.
It is so funny because it will say that to me a lot. It'll be like, oh, this is a lot. I'm like, stop it. It's fine. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm just using you to process. And then again, it will apologize. It'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. I see here that you have been through a lot and you've got this. Like, okay.
Yes, I do. And that's not what I'm asking you for. Just getting in arguments with AI now. Yeah. Melissa, where can people find more of you if they're like, I think I need her in my life, or maybe it's their child or them, and they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website. It's www.insulininspired.com. On Instagram, Melissa Appa _ is what you're looking for there. And yeah, I mean, it's a great adventure now with starting my own business, and we're making a big cross-country move, and yeah, new level, new devil always.
Exactly. It's like, why the hell not? Maybe
Exactly.
ChatGPT will be like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Yes.
Are you sure you can handle this? Check. Yes, I can.
Absolutely. I have the capacity. I've managed my energy, I've built the capacity, and we're thriving. We're not settling in this lifetime. We got one precious life and we need to live it well.
For sure.
Well, thank you, Melissa. And I'm excited to continue to making you emotionally uncomfortable and myself and growing together.
Thanks, Heather.